Hello and welcome back. We are diving deep today. And when I say deep, I mean we are going to the bedrock. Really, the absolute bedrock of human storytelling.
We really are.
We're looking at a narrative that is so embedded in our collective psyche that, you probably don't even remember learning it. It's just there.
It's just part of the cultural air we breathe.
Mm.
It is the foundational myth for a huge portion of the world's population.
Exactly. I'm talking, of course, about Adam and Eve. And before we even open the source material, I want to do a quick mental check. If I say Adam and Eve, what pops into your head?
Right.
I'm guessing it's a garden. Maybe it's lush, green, perfect weather. You've got a man, you've got a woman, there's a snake, maybe coiled around a branch, and there is the fruit, usually an apple.
Sometimes a fig, sometimes wheat, depending on which tradition you ask, but usually in the popular imagination, it's a bright red apple.
Right. And the story is, well, it's pretty simple. Don't eat the apple, they eat the apple, God gets mad, they get kicked out, end of paradise, and welcome to the miserable reality of paying taxes and dying.
A pretty straightforward morality tale.
It's a story about disobedience, right? That's the core of it. A test of willpower that they failed.
That is the Sunday school version, absolutely. That is the version that has been painted in cathedrals, written in storybooks, and told to children for millennia. It is a story about original sin and a fall from grace.
Well, buckle up, because the stack of sources we have today, specifically a socio-political interpretation of the Quran, looking at Surah al-Baqarah verses 35 to 39, is going to take that entire visual and absolutely shatter it.
It really is.
We are not talking about a biological history here. We aren't talking about the first two Homo sapiens. And we are definitely not talking about a magical fruit.
No. The analysis we're looking at today, which draws heavily from scholars like Ghulam Ahmad Parwaz, argues that this story is a manifesto. It is a sociological blueprint.
A manifesto, wow.
Yeah, it's not telling us how the human species began biologically. It's telling us how human society fractured sociologically.
That's a big claim, a really big claim. You're saying this is an allegory.
The Arabic term is tamthil. It means a parable or a similitude. The source material argues that if you read this as a literal story about two people in a park, you miss the entire point. You miss the whole message.
Okay.
But if you read it as the story of the human species evolving from one economic state to another, well, suddenly everything just clicks. It explains why we have poverty, why we have war, and, why we are so anxious all the time.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I'm also a little skeptical. I mean, people love to reinterpret old texts to fit modern ideas. Is this just someone trying to make a religious text sound like a sociology textbook?
That is a fair skepticism. It's a very fair point.
Right.
But what we're going to do is look at the linguistic evidence. We aren't just going to wave our hands and say, oh, it's a metaphor.
Right.
We're going to look at the grammar, the root words, and the structure of the text itself. And I think you'll find that the literal interpretation actually, it kind of falls apart under scrutiny, whereas this sociological one holds up remarkably well.
All right, let's test it then. Let's start with the main character, Adam. In the traditional view, Adam is a guy. He's the first guy. Molded from clay, breathes air, walks around, simple.
Right. But in this source material, Adam is not a proper noun. It isn't the name of a specific male individual. Adam here is a title.
A title?
A title. It represents mankind. It represents the human species as a collective entity.
Adam is us.
Adam is us. That's the core idea.
Okay, but how do you prove that? Because the text says Adam, it talks to him, it seems. Well, it seems pretty personal.
This is where we have to get into the weeds of Arabic grammar. And this, for me, this was the first real aha moment in this research.
Okay.
The host in our source material highlights a massive grammatical inconsistency in the traditional reading a shift that happens right in the middle of the story. It's really fascinating.
Walk us through it.
So in Arabic, grammar is incredibly precise about numbers. In English, we just have singular one person and plural, more than one. Pretty simple. But Arabic has a singular, a dual, which is addressed specifically to two people, and a plural, which is addressed to three or more, or a collective group.
Okay, so there is a specific way to say, hey, you two.
Exactly. And it's grammatically distinct. So at the beginning of the narrative, when the text is setting up the scene in the garden, it uses the dual form. Consistent.
Consistent.
Every time. It addresses Adam and the spouse. You two dwell in the garden. You two eat from it. You two do not approach this tree.
Which makes sense. I mean, two characters, dual address, logical.
Right. But then the fall happens. They slip. They make the mistake, and the command comes down to get out or get down from this state. And in that specific verse, the grammar shifts.
How does it shift?
It drops the dual form entirely and switches to the plural form.
The plural.
Yes. The command is ebitu. That is a plural imperative. It's addressed to a massive group, a collection of nations, a civilization. It means get down, all of you.
Wait a minute. So if it was just Adam and Eve, shouldn't it still be you two get down?
Precisely. That's the point. If this were a literal story about a couple, that grammatical shift would be a mistake, a glaring one. It would be like a typo in the text.
But the source argues it's not a typo.
The source argues there are no typos here. The shift is intentional. It signifies that while the story uses two figures as symbols, the consequence applies to the entire human race. It confirms that Adam was never just one guy. Adam was the archetype for all of humanity.
That's actually a really compelling point. It's hard to argue with the grammar. It's right there in the structure. So the text starts with a symbolic duet but ends with a collective migration.
Precisely. It's describing a shift in the state of humanity. We, all of us, move from one state of existence to another.
Okay, if Adam is humanity, we have to talk about the other half of the duet, Eve, or the spouse. Because traditionally, she gets a pretty raw deal in this story.
To put it mildly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the classic trope is that Eve is the weak link. She's the temptress. She talks to the snake, she gets tricked, and then she goes and seduces Adam into sinning. So historically, this story has been used to justify the idea that women are morally weaker or more prone to error than men.
And this is where the source material gets very, very firm. It explicitly rejects that entire narrative. It argues that the temptress Eve trope is something that was imported from biblical or Israelite traditions, the Israeliyat.
So it's not native to the text itself.
It was superimposed onto the Quranic text. But if you look at the verses we are covering today, that blame game is, well, it's non-existent.
It's not there at all, not even a little.
Not even a hint of it. The text uses the dual form for the mistake, too. They both slipped. Satan caused them both to slip. There is no hierarchy of sin here. There's no finger pointing.
So the source argues that men and women are on completely equal footing.
Exactly. The socio-political implication is that men and women have equal human status. They have equal agency, equal intellect, and crucially, equal vulnerability to error.
So when humanity falls, we fall together.
We fall together. It wasn't a woman trekking a man. It was a collective failure of judgment regarding how to organize their lives.
That really changes the flavor of the story. It stops being a gender war story and becomes a human condition story.
Which brings us to the setting. If Adam and Eve are symbols for humanity, then the Garden Jannah can't just be a park in the clouds. It can't be some metaphysical place.
Right. Because if Adam is us and we are on Earth, then the garden must be a phase of history here on Earth.
Bingo. The source argues that Jannah in this context refers to a historical era of human society on Earth.
So like the Stone Age, hunter-gatherers, something like that?
In a sense, yes. But the source focuses on the economic and social characteristics of that time, not the level of technology. It describes a pre-class society, a time before the invention of poverty.
The invention of poverty. That's a striking phrase. It implies poverty isn't natural.
The source would argue it absolutely isn't. The description of this paradise phase has two main pillars. The first is Ummah Wahida.
Translate that for us.
One single community. The idea that humanity lived as a unified brotherhood. There were no nation-states. There were no borders. There were no passports. Right. No distinct tribes fighting for dominance.
Okay, so everyone is on the same team. That sounds great, but it also sounds utopian. Usually people fight because there's not enough stuff. You know, I need that deer, you need that deer, so let's fight.
That brings us to the second pillar. The text uses the word Ragadan.
Ragadan.
It translates to abundance, but in this context, it implies resources that are free, open, and easily accessible. The earth was providing enough for everyone, and more importantly, access was unrestricted.
Unrestricted access, so no price tags, no for sale signs.
No price tags.
Yeah.
The source uses an analogy here that I think is really helpful to visualize this. It's called the family table.
I remember reading this part. It's a very domestic image for such a big concept.
But it works so well. Think about your own home. Imagine it's dinner time. You've put a big meal on the table. You've got yourself, your spouse, maybe an elderly parent, a teenager who works a part-time job, and a toddler.
Okay, I'm visualizing it. A full house.
How do you decide who eats? Does the toddler have to pay you $5 for a bowl of mac and cheese?
No, of course not. That's absurd.
Does the teenager who has a job get to eat all the steak while the grandmother gets nothing because she doesn't earn an income.
No, that would be abusive. Horrible.
Right. In a family, how do you distribute resources? What's the guiding principle?
You distribute based on need. I mean, if the baby is hungry, the baby eats first. If someone is sick, they get the soup. It doesn't matter who earned it. It matters who needs it.
Exactly. The source calls this, hak ma'amam, a recognized right. In a family, food is a right, not a transaction. You don't feel like you're giving charity to your children when you feed them.
No, it's just what you do.
You are just fulfilling the basic function of the family unit.
And the source is arguing that the whole world used to operate like that, like one big family.
That is the thesis. Yeah. That in this garden phase of human history, the earth was one giant family table. The resources, land, water, food, were collectively held. Anyone could eat wherever they wished. There were no fences saying private property, keep out.
I have to play devil's advocate here. That sounds like, well, that's a communism. Or some kind of anarchist fantasy. No private property. Isn't that ignoring human nature? Don't we naturally want to own things, to have our own stuff?
That is the trillion-dollar question, isn't it? Is the desire to hoard natural, or is it learned? The source argues that the system of the garden proved it wasn't necessary. It highlights 3 specific freedoms that existed because of this shared economy.
Okay, what were they?
First, freedom from hunger. That's obvious. Second, freedom from exposure, so guaranteed shelter and clothing. And the most interesting one for me, freedom from cough and huz.
Cough and huzn. Those are emotional terms, not economic ones.
They are. Cough is fear, usually of an external threat. Huzn is grief or anxiety, usually about the future.
So freedom from anxiety.
Think about modern life. What is the #1 source of stress for most adults? What keeps people up at night?
Money, paying the bills, rent. Will I have a job next month? Can I afford to get sick?
Exactly. That is huzn. That is the anxiety of survival. The source argues that in the garden, because resources were a collective right, nobody had that anxiety. You didn't wake up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling wondering if you'd be homeless next month.
Because the concept of homelessness didn't exist.
It couldn't. The earth was the home for everyone.
It's the difference between freedom to and freedom from. We usually think freedom means I have the freedom to buy whatever I want. This is saying real freedom is I have freedom from having to worry about basic survival.
And that lack of worry is what defined paradise. It wasn't about having a golden palace or magical rivers. It was about having a quiet mind.
Okay, so we have this picture of the garden. It's a pre-class, shared economy society where everyone's needs are met and anxiety is non-existent. It sounds perfect. It sounds, well, like paradise, so.
Yeah.
Why did we leave? Who ruined it?
Enter the villain. Iblis. Satan. The devil.
The antagonist. But again, we have to strip away the cartoon imagery. If Adam is a symbol for humanity, then Iblis cannot be a red guy with a pitchfork. It just doesn't fit.
Right. Because if Iblis is just a monster who attacks us, then we are victims. We didn't do anything wrong. We just got mugged by a demon.
Yeah.
But the story implies we made a choice.
We absolutely made a choice. So the source asks, what does Iblis actually represent in this sociological allegory? And to find the answer, we go back to the dictionary. The root word is ablasa.
Ablasa. And what does that mean?
It means to despair, to be frustrated, to be cut off from hope.
Despair. So that's an emotion, not a creature.
Correct. The source defines Iblis as the internal human force of frustration and selfish emotion. It is the part of the human psyche that reacts to challenges with despair and then twists that despair into selfishness.
I'm scared I won't have enough, so I'm going to take yours. That kind of thinking.
Exactly. It is the voice of the ego. And what is the function of this voice? The text calls Iblis an adu,
which translates to enemy. Usually yes, but the root implies a wedge, something that separates two things that were joined.
a wedge. That fits the one community theme perfectly. If the goal is unity, the enemy is the wedge that splits the unity apart.
Precisely. The primary goal of this selfish force is to split the Ummah Wahida, the one community, into fragments. And this is where the source gets really provocative. How did Iblis do it? What was the whisper?
The traditional story is that he tripped them into eating fruit to become immortal or like God or something like that.
The source argues the whisper was a sociological shift. It wasn't about fruit. It was the introduction of the nuclear family mindset as a priority over the community.
Whoa, hold on. The nuclear family, we usually hold that up as the bedrock of society, family values. You're saying the source treats caring for your family as a bad thing.
Not inherently bad, no, but the whisper acts like this. It says, hey, why are you sharing your hard work with the whole tribe? Why are you feeding that neighbor's kid? You should focus only on your bloodline. Secure resources for your offspring.
Ah, I see. It's the shift from all children are our children to these are my kids and I don't care if your kids starve.
Exactly. It's the birth of tribalism. It's the creation of the U.S. versus them dynamic. The source argues that this was the first spell. When you start drawing a circle around your immediate kin and say, my resources are for these people only, you have driven the wedge. You have fractured the brotherhood.
That is insidious because it sounds so responsible. It sounds like common sense. I mean, who wouldn't want to provide for their own children?
And that is why the text describes Iblis as min al-jinn.
Jinn, again, usually means genies, supernatural beings.
But linguistically, jinn comes from the root jana, which means to hide or to be covered. It refers to something imperceptible, something you can't see with your eyes.
Like germs, or radio waves, or thoughts.
Or subconscious urges. The source argues that min al-jinn means this selfish drive creeps into your psyche imperceptibly. It doesn't announce itself as evil. It announces itself as prudence. It announces itself as security.
So you don't realize you are destroying the community.
No, you think you are just being a good parent, but the result is the destruction of the shared table.
So the villain is inside the house. The villain is our own tendency to prioritize our small circle over the whole.
Correct. And that leads us directly to the weapon of the crime, the forbidden tree.
The shajara, okay, I'm ready for this. You said it's not an apple. You said it's not wheat.
The source actually mocks the wheat idea. It asks, why would the creator expel humanity from a state of perfection just for eating a sandwich? It's absurd. The punishment must fit the crime. If the consequence was the destruction of human unity, the tree must be something catastrophic.
Okay, so what is the tree?
Let's look at the word shajara. In Arabic, a tree is called shajar because of the way its branches intertwine and tangle.
Tangling, okay.
The root shujj mera is used for words like mushajara, which means dispute, conflict, entanglement, or even fist fight.
So the word for tree literally shares a root with the word for fighting.
Yes, because a fight is an entanglement of limbs, just as a tree is an entanglement of branches. So the source interprets do not approach this tree as do not approach the state of social fragmentation and conflict.
The tree is the conflict. It's not a plant, it's a state of being.
It is the symbol of a tangled, divided, fighting society.
But the text says they ate from it. How do you eat from conflict? That feels like a stretch.
This is the crux of the entire allegory. In this framework, eating from the tree symbolizes the invention of private ownership.
Private ownership, that is the forbidden fruit, owning land.
Think about it. How do you go from a world where everything is shared, the garden, to a world of conflict, the tree? You do it by drawing a line on the ground and saying, this is mine.
And as soon as you say this is mine, you are also saying this is not yours.
Exactly. And the moment you exclude others from the resources of the earth, you have created potential for conflict. If I have the food and you are hungry, and I say, this is my private property, we are now enemies. We are now in a state of mushajarat.
This connects back to the word zulm, right? The verse says, do not approach this tree lest you become zalamun.
Yes. Zulm is often translated as wrongdoing, but technically it means displacing a right from its proper place. It means putting something where it doesn't belong.
Explain that in this context. What's being displaced?
If the earth and its resources were created for the benefit of all humanity collectively, that's their proper place, then taking a piece of it and keeping it for yourself is zulm. You are displacing the right of the community. You are violating the natural order of the garden.
That is heavy. That suggests that the very foundation of our modern economy, private property, is the original sin in this narrative.
It suggests that the transition from shared resources to private ownership was the fall. It was the moment humanity fell from the high ground of unity to the low ground of class conflict.
And the consequence wasn't that God struck them with lightning. The consequence was they became enemies to each other.
The text says it explicitly. Get down, some of you being enemies to others. The natural consequence of ownership is rivalry. We went from a family table to a battlefield.
This brings up a really difficult question for me. We did this. Humans did this. We invented ownership. We invented borders. And we think we're so smart. We think we're the most advanced species. But if this interpretation is right, our smartness is exactly what kicked us out of paradise.
You have hit on the philosophical core of the source material. This leads us directly to the discussion of aqwal versus wahi, intellect versus revelation.
Because usually we frame this as a battle, faith versus reason, science versus religion. But the source seems to have a more nuanced take. It's not a fight.
It's not a fight at all. It doesn't say intellect is bad. It says intellect is neutral. It's a tool, a very powerful but neutral tool.
Okay.
The source uses a brilliant analogy here that I want to spend a moment on, the analogy of the eye and the sun.
I love this one. Break it down for us.
Okay, so imagine you have perfect vision. Your eyes are 20/20, no cataracts, no issues. That represents your intellect. It has the capacity to see. It has the capacity to process information.
Got it. I am genius. I have perfect eyes.
Right. Now imagine I take you with your genius eyes,
Right.
and I lock you in a room that is pitch black, absolute zero light. And the room is full of pits, snakes, and furniture. Can you navigate the room?
No, I'm going to break my neck. I'm useless.
Why? Your eyes work fine.
Because there's no light. Eyes need light to function. The hardware is perfect, but there's no input.
Exactly. The source argues that intellect is the eye and revelation, wahi, is the sun.
So revelation provides the light, the moral guidance.
Yes. The argument is that the human intellect, on its own, operates in the dark regarding moral values.
Yeah.
The intellect is a computer. It can calculate how to build a nuclear bomb with incredible precision. But can it tell you whether or not you should drop it?
Well, history suggests the answer is a resounding no.
Right. Without an external light source, an objective moral standard, the intellect just becomes a tool for the ego. It becomes a lawyer for Iblis.
A lawyer for Iblis, that is such a good phrase, because that's what lawyers do. They argue for their client, regardless of right or wrong.
It's true, though, isn't it? Think about the smartest people in our society, the people who crash economies or design exploitative algorithms or find tax loopholes. They're using their intellect. They are brilliant.
They are using their intellect to justify selfishness on a massive scale.
Exactly. A smart thief is much more dangerous than a dumb one.
Yeah.
The intellect says, how can I hoard this wealth legally? How can I exploit this labor force efficiently? How can I frame this war as a humanitarian intervention?
It rationalizes. It creates complex justifications for simple greed.
It rationalizes. And the source calls this the battle of wits. When society is run by intellect alone, without the guidance of revelation, which is just the memory of the shared rights of the garden, it becomes a competition of who can outsmart the other.
So the intelligent exploit the simple.
The strong exploit the weak. And we call it progress. We call it innovation.
We call it the economy.
We call it civilization. But the source refers to these as not man-made fabrications. We have built a sophisticated system of exploitation and convinced ourselves it's the only way to live.
So we are stuck in the dark room. We have smart lawyers and hedge fund managers bumping into furniture and calling it success. How do we turn the lights back on? How do we get back to the garden?
This is where we get to the solution, the cure. And the source discusses two terms that are usually purely religious, salah and taba. But of course, in this interpretation, it completely redefines them.
I expected nothing less at this point. Let's start with salah. Usually that means prayer. 5 times a day, on a rug, facing Mecca.
And the source would say that ritual prayer is the training. It's the reminder. But the reality of salah is socio-political. The phrase often used in the Quran is ikomat al-salah, establish the salah.
And what does establish mean here? It's an active verb.
It implies setting up a system. The root implies connection. The source argues that establishing salah means establishing the system of connection that ensures resources flow to everyone. It's about building the infrastructure for fairness.
So establishing salah isn't just building more mosques, it's building a fair economy. It's creating universal health care or housing for all.
Correct. It is the mechanism that recreates the security of the garden. If you have a society where people are praying in the mosques but starving in the streets, you have not established salah. You have broken the connection. The system is offline.
That is a radical shift. It makes religion a civic duty, not just a personal one.
And then there is taba, repentance.
Usually that means feeling bad, saying sorry. God, I'm sorry I lied.
The source asks, Messiah saying sorry enough. If you are driving a car and you take a wrong turn and you start driving towards a cliff, does saying I'm sorry to the dashboard save you?
No, you have to grab the wheel and turn the car around.
Exactly. So the source defines taba as a literal U-turn. It outlines a 3-step practical process, and none of them involve just feeling bad.
Okay, what's step 1?
Realization. You have to intellectually admit that the current path is broken. You have to look at the society of private ownership and class war and say, this is not working. This is the cliff.
Step 2.
Return. You have to go back to the fork in the road where you deviated. You have to trace the problem back to its root, which in this case is the hoarding of resources, the invention of ownership.
And step 3.
Reform. You have to actively build the alternative. You have to dismantle the structures of Zulm, the exploitation, and replace them with the structures of Salah, the connection, the sharing.
So Taba is a revolution. It's a systemic overhaul. It's a political program.
It is. And there's a beautiful, hopeful detail the source adds here. It mentions a concept that when humanity takes one step towards this system of unity, the result moves 10 steps towards them.
The God walks towards you idea.
Yes. The interpretation is that the laws of nature are designed to support unity and cooperation. If we align our systems with those laws, if we stop fighting nature and start working with it, the result of peace and abundance will accelerate. We won't have to claw our way back to paradise inch by inch. The momentum of the universe will push us there.
That sounds great. That sounds incredibly hopeful, but I have to play the skeptic again. Because looking around the world right now, we aren't doing that.
No.
We are doing the opposite. We are privatizing everything. We are building higher walls. We are doubling down on the tree of conflict.
And the source has a very specific warning for that. And frankly, this is the part that gave me chills when I was reading it.
Section 6, the warning.
The Quranic term used for those who reject this system is Maishat Danka,
Maishat Danka. Translate that for us.
a narrow life, a constricted, tight, squeezed life.
Now hang on. If I look at the Western world, the engine of capitalism and private ownership, we have abundance. We have Amazon Prime delivering tomorrow. We have supermarkets with 50 types of cereal. We have iPhones. That doesn't look narrow. That looks broad. That looks like the Ragadan you described earlier.
But look closer. Does it feel like Ragadan?
What do you mean?
The source argues that Maishat Danka is not about a lack of objects. It is about the state of the human experience. It translates this concept into modern terms as economic anxiety.
Oh, okay.
Think about the average person in a wealthy, industrialized nation. Do they feel free? Or do they feel squeezed?
They feel squeezed constantly. Rent is 50% of their income. Childcare is a mortgage payment. They have student debt, medical debt.
Exactly. We have the stuff, but we don't have the peace. The force argues that a society built on private ownership creates a hell of constant insecurity. Even the rich are insecure. They are terrified of losing what they have.
So hell isn't just a fire in the afterlife. Hell is the rat race.
Hell is the rat race. Hell is living in a world of abundance, but being paralyzed by the fear of scarcity. It is the definition of Maishat Danka. We are choked by our own systems. We've created so much stuff we've forgotten how to live.
That is a profound distinction. The standard of living versus the quality of life. We have a high standard of living, lots of stuff, but a narrow quality of life, constant anxiety.
Precisely. And the source defines the denier, the kafir, in this economic sense.
Usually kafir means someone who rejects God, an atheist or an infidel.
But in this context, the root kufor means to cover or to hide. The source defines the denier as the one who ties knots on the bags of provision.
The hoarder.
The hoarder. The one who restricts the flow of resources. Even if that person is in the mosque praying 5 times a day, if their actions and their wealth support a system of inequality, they are a denier of the system. They are denying the deen.
And the believer.
The believer, the mu'min, is the one who unties the knots, the one who ensures the flow. The source uses this beautiful metaphor of an udder full of milk. Shukr, or gratitude, isn't just saying thanks God.
No.
Shukr is milking the udder so the milk flows to the calf. If you leave the milk in the udder, it spoils. It causes pain to the cow and starves the calf.
That is a visceral image. Wealth that is hoarded spoils the society. Wealth that flows nourishes it.
That is the manifesto.
Wow. We've covered a massive amount of ground. My head is spinning a little.
We really have. It's a lot to take in.
We started with a Sunday school story about an apple, and we have dismantled it into a complete socioeconomic theory. A political manifesto, really.
We moved from biology to sociology. We redefined Adam as us, the collective humanity.
We redefined the garden as a pre-class economy of shared rights.
Like redefined Iblis as our internal selfish frustration.
We redefined the tree as a conflict generated by private ownership.
And we redefined the fall as the transition from sharing to hoarding.
And we redefined the cure not as a personal ritual, but as a systemic collective return to the laws of connection and fair distribution.
It connects all the dots in a way that makes the ancient text feel startlingly modern. It feels like it was written yesterday.
It does. And it leaves us with a really provocative question to walk away with, a very uncomfortable question.
It does. The source mentions that this narrative is just the prologue. It sets the stage for the rest of human history. The story of the children of Israel, the story of nations rising and falling. But for us, right now, sitting in 2026, it forces us to look in the mirror.
What's the question?
If the fall was the invention of private ownership, and if the garden was a state of universal shared rights, then what are we building today? What is our society doing?
Yeah.
Are we trying to get back to the garden? Or are we just building better, shinier fences? Are we using our incredible intellect to untie the knots? Or are we just using it to invent more complex ways to tie them?
Are we living in the hell of the allegory, this Maishat Dunka, and just disguising it as progress?
That is the question the source leaves us with. And it's not a question you can answer with a prayer. You have to answer it with your actions, your wallet, and your vote.
That is something to chew on for a long, long time. This has been heavy, but in the best way.
It's a deep dive. That's what we do.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this. It's changed the way I will see that story forever.
My pleasure. It was a fascinating topic to explore.
And thanks to you for listening. Keep thinking, keep questioning, and maybe try to untie a few knots today. We'll see you on the next deep dive.